Hi everyone, my name is Alyssa. I'm the Administrative and Visitor Engagement Coordinator here at the Seward House. And this month for our travel video series, we're picking up from the month of May where Mr. Seward left off at the end of April. In the month of May, starting it off, he gets on the Red Sea. He spends the majority of the beginning of May on the Red Sea. They're headed up to Suez. Mr. Seward did remark that the farther away they got from India and the farther up on the Red Sea that they went, he tended to enjoy the weather a little bit more, it got a little bit more mild. And while they were on the Red Sea, Mr. Seward did note that they passed the port of Mecca. So once they got up to Suez, they spent a little bit of time there before taking the Suez Canal over to the city of Cairo, and that was their first major stop here in Egypt. They arrived there on May 7th, where they were greeted by the Egyptian viceroy, where they had coffee and discussed a whole range of subjects such as politics, agriculture, and education. While they were in Cairo also, the Sewards visited many places, not just the viceroy, and they had multiple different experiences. The women traveling with Mr. Seward were invited to visit the viceroy's mother in her palace, where they also met the viceroy's harem. So they had a lovely experience with them. They had their own kind of women time. They also, while they were in Cairo, visited the pyramids, and that was one of their favorite things while they were in Cairo. They noted that the pyramids definitely did not disappoint them at all, and they were even able to go inside one, writing, "We entered through a very narrow door, the lowest explored apartment of the pyramid called the Queen's Chamber. It is perhaps 12 feet square, with the walls are of highly polished red granite. We ascended to the greater apartment called the King's Chamber, 30 feet by 20, the walls like those of the Queen's Chamber. Near one end of the room is an immense open sarcophagus, also of red granite. It is exactly the same condition now as when it was first explored and when the first explorers described it 2,000 years ago." So that was definitely impressive for the Sewards. And while they were there, they also visited the Sphinx. And Mr. Seward thought that it was one of the most attractive of the monuments. They also traveled to a possible site of the lost city of Heliopolis, along with Maturina, where the Catholic Church had stated was where Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus had stayed. So they definitely made a point of marking that as well. They left Cairo just before Mr. Seward's birthday on May 12th. They took a train down to Siut, where they were joined briefly by the governor of Upper Egypt and his staff. They also visited the United States Vice Consul there. Seward noticed that the Vice Consul's home was more in the European style and less of an Egyptian style, which he noted that he did prefer. By May 13th, they were in a town called Abydos, where they were taken by a camel caravan, sorry, that was a little bit of alliteration there, to the temple of Memnon, where they were received and promised a banquet actually in the temple, which they were kind of shocked by. The next day, they were properly able to explore it, writing that on the wall of an interior corridor is a tablet which contains a chronological record of the names and seals of 76 successive kings of Egypt, beginning with Menes, the founder of the monarchy and builder of Memphis, and ending with Satis, whose statue, with that of his son Ramses, stands at the base as if reading the interesting genealogical record of a mutilated copy of which is preserved in the British Museum. Every part of the walls, the interior as well as the exterior, is covered with sculptures and hieroglyphics. So from there, the next stop the Sewards went to was Thebes, where they visited the ruins of both Luxor and Karnak. And Mr. Seward noted that Luxor was more just a debris, unfortunately. That wasn't all that much to see, but they definitely enjoyed Karnak a lot more as there was much more to see. The next place while in Thebes they visited was the Tomb of the Kings, writing, "Massive doorways of the tombs are opened into the face of the mountain. Then a descending, smooth, inclined plane conducts to the tombs, which are excavated at a lower depth of the rock. The tombs consist of a succession of vaulted chambers in various dimensions. Some are only 20 feet square, some 40, 80, or 100 feet long and proportionately wide. Outer chambers have, as in the catacombs before mentioned, audience chambers or chapels. Many of them are obviously built as banqueting rooms for costly entertainments of friends of the dead. Seward then goes into great detail about the tombs of the kings, and he seemed to enjoy his visit there very much. They then left Thebes and traveled north on the Nile River, stopping briefly in a few smaller towns before finally stopping in Philae. Where there, they found out that ancient Egyptians regarded voyages up the Nile as great voyages, great things to do. So the Sewards were very pleased to hear that. While they were in Philae, they also noted that the architecture there, mostly the ruins, were a mix of Egyptian, Greek, and also Middle Eastern. So there were a lot of different influences in this one town when it came to the architecture. From Philae, they went back to Thebes very briefly to visit the vice consul again before traveling up the Nile once more to Memphis. They never left the boat to explore the city, but they did still take in as much of it as they could, and they appreciated it, writing, "Memphis, founded by Menes, the home of the authors of civilization, the builders of the pyramids, the kings who knew and the kings who knew not Joseph." By the end of May, Seward found himself back in Cairo, and where he visited the viceroy, thanking him for his hospitality, and finally making his way over to Alexandria. And that is where we will pick up again in June. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you next month.